Hello and welcome to the preview show edition of the Blue Monday podcast, a 3 times weekly show looking into all things Ipswich Town. I'm your host Richard Woodward and I'm delighted to welcome back the brilliant Harry from Bath. Harry, how's it going?
Hi Rich, great to see you. Been an eventful week, plenty to discuss.
I don't know,
Lots of
well,
football.
I was thinking what are we going to chat about, you know? I've got no notes, I mean there's nothing happening, is there?
Don't mention the war, hey?
I mean, where do we start? Let's do our usual kind of backtrack to the games that we've recently
Yeah,
had. We did Birmingham at quite a bit of length on the flagship show, but I'll do a kind of
yeah,
a bit of a recap on that one. In terms of the Birmingham lineup, I don't think there was any surprises there. I think we debated that central midfield pairing, and it was Gardner that got the nod over Clifton Belt.
yeah,
But otherwise, pretty standard there. And
yeah,
for us. Um, Yeah, I guess we would have wanted to see NCR. I'm sorry, Donastian start a right
Sebastian.
back, but Pennington
Yeah.
there again. But otherwise, not too many surprises. But yeah, there's quite a few questions we had on Sunday, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this. Whether it was a point gained or 2 points dropped. I was very much in the latter camp, but interesting to get your thoughts.
I felt the latter. It came back to that question again of us being incapable of sustaining a performance for 90 minutes, and that's in such a streetwise league as the Championship. That just keeps teams will wait. They will wait and wait. They know that at some point there will be a dip, and when there's a dip, they will pounce. And I think that more than anything else is the key to our survival. If we can actually start putting consistent 90-minute performances together. When it went to 2-1, I was working on Saturday and I was following it on my mobile, and it was hopping with all the updates from the various WhatsApp groups. And once it went to 2-1, you just knew there was a collective. Oh, here we go.
Yeah,
The sense was that not that it wasn't so much that the pendulum swung; it swung big time. And if possibly if we'd held out for another 10 minutes, from what my sense was, we could have weathered it, and we could have regrouped. But teams in any game. And we do it to opponents as well. You will have phases where teams will come at you. They will have strong periods, and that's the fear. We just don't seem to have the ability to withstand those bouts, those 15, 20-minute bouts of intensity when they happen.
yeah,
Yeah, and the feeling then mirroring it onto the Borough game was that the Borough, they didn't even have to have much of a period of
no,
intensity,
no.
but you felt that if we had come back into the game, and Ben said it even in his post-match report, in his kind of I've been witnessing program, which was a absolutely brilliantly objective analysis. I thought it was brilliant what he put together. You just felt that if we'd been playing a different team who felt they wanted to do something about their goal difference, they could have quite easily.
Yes,
Yeah,
it did feel like they were toying with us. And obviously, Pulis ball is not about possession and dominance and
no,
camping in the opposition's half. But
yeah,
yeah, you're quite
yeah,
right. It could have been more.
yeah,
I mean, the other theme that I picked up, certainly in Birmingham and also in the second half more on Tuesday, is we do get sights of goal at Birmingham. And we didn't mention this on the Sunday show. There was a chance right at the end, I think, and I forget who it is. I think it was Sears or someone got a cross in and went right in front of the face of goal, and
yeah,
I think it was just poorly played so Sears couldn't tap it in. But there was a
yeah,
chance there for us to actually nick the win, having been under the cosh for so much of the second half. And Borough on Tuesday, I think Sears had a sight. We had quite a few crosses kind of ghosting in and no one really getting on the end of it. But
yeah.
at this point where we're desperate for points and desperate to try and swing the game's momentum in our favour, we're just not finding the net, are we? And it's
No,
if you can't keep clean sheets and you concede crap goals, but you can't score. I mean, it's not to take a rocket scientist to realise that equation is not going to end up in a top half finish, is it?
no. More than one thing needs to be fixed.
Well,
Mm.
yeah. I mean, we'll come on to the midfield maybe later on, or do you want to do that now because it is Borough? Maybe we'll save that and consider what we might do to remedy it for Swansea. But yeah, the Borough midfield trio it didn't. The central midfield just didn't work again, did it?
What will it, briefly we'll talk. As I say, we'll try and put a formation together for Saturday. But the problem I had with them was that midfield had echoed the famous Peterborough 7-1 defeat when we had, I think it was Ledbetter and Andrews, where I think in hindsight I think Andrews was the more guilty pair. Yeah, I know he scored the early great goal, but Ledbetter was really the one I think was running around with the fire extinguisher. It was I couldn't understand what the roles of the three midfielders were on Tuesday night. They were busy. It wasn't a lack of industry. It wasn't a lack of it wasn't a lack of effort, though possibly Nolan was hiding, we'll say that. But you just felt, well, okay, who's doing what? How is this meant to be set up? And the famous pressing, as Ben picked up again, when you actually look at it for the opening Borough goal, just look at how utterly ineffective our pressing was, which then meant that Besic suddenly, you find yourself thinking as he was careering towards the back four, where is everybody? Where is everybody gone?
One of my friends
calamitous.
On Twitter posted a picture of the lead up to I think it was the Besic goal, where I think at least two of our midfielders were beyond the ball, as it were, and totally out of position. And you think, well, I mean, the high press was the intention. That was what we were told about. We've not really seen a huge amount of evidence for it, but it just totally backfired, didn't it, on Tuesday? And I guess the fear we've got is against better passing teams, because Borough are quite effective at stringing maybe a couple of passes and finding themselves right at our penalty area. Swansea will pick us off, won't they, if they get their passing game right?
As I say, we'll look at them in detail in a bit, but they have proved that if they come up against a weak defence, or a disorganised back line, they can punish it. It doesn't happen in every game, but yes, you're right, because they do move the ball through the thirds, and there is a danger. Particularly as well, there was a phase when Borough did up their game in half. They had about 3 chances in a row. I think the final one was Hugo just curling it just wide, but there were about 2 or 3 chances where they were slicing through our lines without any difficulties.
Downing was having a lot of fun, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. There is that motif which we'll mention, the left-footed. I don't actually think Swansea have one, but the left-footed right winger. We had Hotta, we had Bowen, and we had Downing. When he cut inside and let that shot off, I remember sort of thinking, this is the third game in a row where a left-footed right winger has caused us a problem. But
we'll see if we can find one then.
I'm not.
Well, I've got a quick question for you. And it's from our friend Benjamin Bloom. If you were going to buy a ticket for one ITFC home game before Christmas, why would West Brom at home be a great choice? I couldn't think of the answer, but I might have mitigating circumstances for that. You might be able to answer this one, Harry.
Well, Muller pointed out the fact that they've gone back to wearing yellow and green, which was the famous, of course, Cup semi-final kit that they wore, and we always raise our game against a team playing yellow and green, but. To be fair, I think there might be a little after-match event on, which might be worth going to, which I'm quietly looking forward to, actually.
Are you talking the West Brom game on the 24th of November?
That's the one, the 24th of November, yes,
in a very
indeed.
Seamless plug that we've not contrived at all. But
indeed.
But yeah, quick plug to say that Harry's going to be there. I'm sadly not, but it'd be great to see you guys at the Curve Bar after the game on the 24th of November against West Brom. Plenty of stuff to happen, and my esteemed colleague will be there doing his best to kind of dissect what happened at West Brom and look ahead to the Bristol City game that's on the following Wednesday.
Let's cards on the table on this. There's so many times we've been to matches, and this sounds I'm not exactly hyping the game up here, but where you go along and the game is not great, but the thing you take away from it is just meeting up with all your fellow supporters, chatting about it before, and of course after the game people tend to go on home because people have journeys to get back, so you tend to have a great hour before the game, and then the team gets announced and it's all great fun, and then it all dissipates a little bit at the end. So the thing I'm actually looking forward to is actually just being able to catch up with people after the game and have a proper chinwag about, well, how did that go, and talk about how the season is going, and just that should be real fun. It'll just hopefully we'll have a great game and we'll put on a good performance, but even if not, just the chance of actually meeting up with a bunch of town fans and sorting the world's problems out. You can't say worse than that, can you?
Absolutely right. And apart from a few spiky moments where we actually scored on Saturday, the best bit of the day was being in the pub with Ben, with Mullet, with Graham Blackburn, with Steve, with Gavin, with Mark, a few other people that I've probably forgotten. and as you say, how sort of holding court and just trying to figure out
Yeah.
how we tried to turn things around, and it was quite bittersweet. We've kind of had to stand up and go to the game.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely, I'd absolutely endorse that thought. And if you want to kind of meet up with Ben and Dave and Stat and I think Harry and Stu and Andy from the EADT as well, and I'm sure other things and bits and pieces that Ben I'm sure will come up with. But it sounds like it'd be great fun, and I've decided that I'm going to do a video message, so I'll post it during the afternoon. I figured out what it's going to be as well, but I'm not, no spoilers.
Rich couldn't be here to accept the award this evening. However, he has said this.
Yes. I dedicate this to all of my fans. Yeah. So yeah, 24th. Details on the Twitter account and on the Facebook page. Tickets on Eventbrite, I think, or tweet one of us and we'll point you in the right direction.
Sure.
So we'll come back to some more plugs later on, but let's find our way to deepest, darkest South Wales and Swansea City, who find themselves just outside the playoff positions on goal difference, and that will be a recurring theme for what Harry has to come and tell us about and talk to in a second. Graham Potter in charge there now, a really good appointment, a good reputation garnered from taking unfancied Ostersons to the Champions League and promotions, and a squad that still has a core of the Premier League still about it, Harry. Where do you want to start? Because we had a bit of a preamble beforehand to how we would play Swansea. Mr. Potter's a bit of he's not a tinkerman, but he does shuffle the pack a little bit. So how's the best way to play it?
It's interesting to talk about his philosophy, I think, initially, because that then feeds into what's going on afterwards. Most of us look at formations. You think, okay, he's a right back, he's a left wing back, he's an attacking midfielder. You kind of have a model as to how we play. My sense, looking at Potter, is he doesn't do that. He looks at it more in a very interesting way. It's more, what is a player's role? Okay, what are my duties here? What is being expected of me? Now, where's the best place for me to do that?
Wow.
And it sounds a bit mad, but it means that you can often have changes of role in the course of a game. Therefore, it's not so much that players are changing their position; they're being asked to do something different, therefore resulting in a change of position. Which it's all weird and interesting, and suddenly it's a whole new way of set of assumptions. But it does mean that several times in the game, it's you think, oh, okay, what are we playing now? And of course we're all trying to think of it in terms of wing backs, but in fact what you should be doing is thinking, oh, what's that player actually trying to achieve?
Yes.
And once you understand that, then everything then falls into place, and that's just where he happens to be on the pitch. It does mean it makes life hell for Swansea fans when they're trying to analyze what the team formation is going to be, because they think it'll be that at the beginning of the game, but after 7 minutes it could be something completely different. It's a whole different way of looking at it.
And presumably for that's quite an ask of the players as well, though, isn't it? Because I'm sure we've heard Paul Hurst say before that his philosophy is that the players should be able to do their thinking for themselves on the pitch, not to the same extent that we're going to evolve the system and maybe react to what the opposition's going to do. But it's very much, I'm in this position, my colleague is over there, therefore I should be moving over there or compensating for that. So it's asking quite a lot of their players, but presumably they've got the quality to do that.
Well, I'm not necessarily if they have the quality, but they certainly, the other huge thing which keeps coming up time and time again about Potter is his man management and getting the best out of limited players. A lot of players, they were saying, you may draw a parallel, that a lot of players really, he says, one of their fans said they're basically League One players, and how he's eking what he is out of them is quite remarkable. He's also praised, and I think this helps, he's praised for his judgment with selections and substitutions. So I think it's a combination of good people management, and you have to run a model like this, you have to have outstanding footballing judgment. You need to be very confident in what you're doing.
We'll talk about what his players can do as well.
Yeah. For example, to give you an idea of how, they like against Birmingham last week, there were kind of 14 players. We knew 10 of the starting 11. We could probably name about 5 if we're lucky of the Swansea 11. And midweek, for example, he swapped goalkeepers. He took out Erwin Mulder, who's the normal goalkeeper, who's very good with his feet and is very good at actually moving the ball out, which kind of fits their passing system. And they put in Christopher Nordfeldt, who's a Sweden international, and one of them described him, he has the touch of an elephant. But against Wigan, where they were going to, because Wigan have a really strong home record, they were going there. They knew it was going to be a tougher game. They were going to have to change their model of play, and therefore they played a slightly more defensive, a slightly more pragmatic team to allow for that. So swapping your goalkeepers contingent on your opponent
is really impressive, isn't it?
That takes some doing. It really does. Yeah. Yeah.
So who do you want to pick out then? Should we try and figure out?
Let's feed in from there too. There's a couple of things. There's a couple of thematic things which are worth saying about them. The first thing is, in overall terms, most Swans think this is a year for a playoff run. They don't think they're ready yet to. They feel the squad is still a work in progress. They're not, as you said, seventh in the table and outside the playoffs in goal difference. For them, that's about a power score for the season. If things work out, they could drift into the top six if a couple of key players come back from injury. But it's like any relegated team. It's a bit like a financial fair play last week with Birmingham. Relegated teams can often end up unbalanced as well, and they've only got one top quality fit striker at the moment in Ollie McBurney. They feel they have a lot of wingers, and some of them are either too old, some of them are rookies. So there are players. When I'm not saying that he's playing players out of position, but he is playing players in different roles, if I can put it like that. So
just very quickly, Harry, if I may, I remember your preview with Ben, I think in the summer, and I think as you were doing it, there was a bit of a fire sale going on at Swansea, wasn't there? And there was quite a lot of unrest at the players that had been allowed to leave, and not too many players coming in. They were linked with Ryan Woods, and that didn't materialise, and he went off to Stoke. Yeah. Presumably that's all settled down now, and in terms of book balancing, that appears to have done the trick.
They were on the verge of meltdown. It reminded me actually of the year Steve Bruce, bless him, took Hull up.
Cabbage man.
Cabbage man, poor bloke. When Hull, the season they went back up again under Bruce, when he played the 3-5-2 system, they Robbie Brady and all the rest of it, they at the beginning of that season they were in meltdown again, and he managed to, within a month they had managed to stabilize the team. He'd managed to he'd put a squad together basically that was functional and able to move on. And I think just as equally Potter has done with Swansea what Bruce did with Hull. So all of that is past history, which kind of is an interesting parallel, because Hull went up in the playoffs, and you wouldn't put it past this lot to do exactly the same thing. It's one little thing which is worth mentioning. Moving on to the onto the squad, there is a romantic. And we were talking as town fans about the Ipswich way, and it harkens back to an ideal of playing football with style, on the front foot, with energy, with sort of that elan, to describe it in those terms, and it harkens back to a period which we all know and love, and it pops up every so often. Swansea, you can times that by 10 with Swansea, because they talk about the Swansea way, which is very recent and it's like a drug for them. The 4-3-3 shape and a style of play that's their most recent successful period. It counts for a huge amount in their thinking, and they will wish that to be the case, even if it isn't quite there yet, because that's what as far as they're concerned, that's where they want to get to again, because they know how good it was. I mean, one of the things, for example, I picked out a quote because it wasn't just so much what it said, but what it represented. Potter is the most important thing to happen to our club since Roberto Martinez.
Well, there you go.
And there you go. But
they've had quite a few good managers, haven't they? Because you think Martinez, there was Sosa as well. There was Brendan Rodgers, I think, there wasn't there.
Rodgers, Laudrup, yeah. But that's the thing, and we talked about this in the preview show, in the season preview with Ben, that they disrupted that model. It's the owners getting teams relegated thing again. They disrupted that model. They brought in,
wasn't it?
Yeah, as I say, the American owners brought in a manager who wasn't comfortable with that model of play, and confusion Confusion
Yes.
sets in, and once you have confusion, confidence goes, and then off you go.
Mm.
Um, the other thing, yeah, and as concomitant with the shape and the style of play, there is this, and it goes back to the man management. There is a never say die attitude, and this has come from the manager, no question at all. And they are aiming for high tempo pass and move football. So, but there is one of the comments was great possession, but no end product to show for it. And although they had an eye-catching win last week against Queens Park Rangers 3-0, and everyone went, "Oh, here we go! You know, is this? You know, have we got another? You know, is the Swansea of old being reborn?" You have to put that win in context against this very functional 0-0 draw they picked up at Wigan during the week.
Yes.
They're,
Lots of those, haven't there been?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Despite the hype, their goal difference over the game so far is 10-4 and 6 against. So deep down, they are. You've got to see them fundamentally as another tough nut to crack. They talk about their style of play as high risk and high reward, but it's to me they're organised and balanced at the moment. Partly because they haven't quite got the players to get there. Whereas if this was Middlesbrough during the week, you think, well, they've got there already. This is what they want to do. You feel that Swansea in a way are navigating away from that, and they're navigating on a pathway which, in many ways we would have hoped to have been navigating on as well.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest, I guess, the biggest difference as I see it between Borough and Swansea is the forward options. As you say, there's McBurney.
Yeah,
Boney's injured, I think, or not fit.
yeah,
But you look at Borough, who were able to rest a Sumbalonga and Gestead, and
mm,
had Hugo starting for them. Swansea aren't kind of blessed with those riches. They've got, because they play a 4-3-3. I think I would consider them to be wide forwards as opposed to strikers.
yeah.
And as we said, no Boney at the moment, but the threat seems to come from midfield. Is that fair? Or
It comes from a variety of places. I mean, they have been improvising, and this is where Potter's approach really does work. Players playing all sorts of players popping up in strange, what we would call positions. Um, I mean, at one stage, Wayne Routledge was playing as a striker. Now, Wayne Routledge is 33,
I was
and he's
going
a
to say
winger.
he's the old winger that you were talking
And
about
yeah,
earlier.
exactly, yeah. And yet but he was able to play in a holding role up front. He wasn't, he wasn't a lethal finisher. That wasn't what he was doing. But he was playing that role to help bring the midfielders into play. This is the way. It's almost kind of just showing. This is how the guy thinks. It's quite impressive. I think that where their dangers come from. Who would I pick out? Well, Bersant Selena we will talk about in detail, but and McBurney would be the two. There's that gentleman from your neck of the woods, Courtney Baker Richardson as well. He's
Yes, Leamington FC up the
Leamington
breaks.
FC indeed, yes, and I think Kettering as well, if my research is right. We'll come on and talk about, as I say, yeah, essentially in conventional models they, they they are described as lining up with four at the back, three in the middle, and as you say, and two out wide and one up front. But as I say, that does alter during the game. Um, they did say this thing: if we have finishes, we would run away with this division. They feel as if they've got the balance right, but they're lacking flair.
Yeah.
They're lacking flair because not just because of a lack of a finisher or a focal point, apart from McBurney up front. They're also they're wide, they're wingers. Selena's been playing out left. They've been playing players like Conor Roberts, who's a right back for the Welsh national team. He's been playing on the right wing. So it's a very improvised, it's a makeshift team, which is why they think playoffs rather than automatic work in progress. That's what, and again, they're thinking about going up next year. So in that sense, the their danger people are, it can come from a variety of different places. I guess is the best way to describe it. They don't have, and it's not like, oh, we need to. McBurn is the obvious name, but different people can pop up in different circumstances and cause problems.
You
Yeah,
mentioned him. Shall we start there? Mrs. Nuts tweets, Selena has been injured, but looks
yeah,
like he's back in the team. Hashtag
yeah,
Nuff said. Shall we analyse how he's
yeah,
getting on there, and maybe under a slightly different philosophy perhaps than maybe last season when he was on loan with us?
yeah. He's the one. I think he's the alchemist. Big debate as to whether you play him out on the left or you play him through the centre as a playmaker, because the idea with McBurney, the thing is, McBurney and uh, Baker Richardson, they're not. McBurney is actually he can operate from deep rather than just being up on the shoulder of the defender. But he's the type of striker who they think might be able to create space for Selena to be able to exploit
Okay, yep.
in the middle. If that makes sense.
Yep.
And so you've got that option, or alternatively, you can give him the space out left and let him cut inside on his right foot, and
which we've seen to great effect last season.
We have seen that, yes. Okay, in general terms, what are the obvious stuff that they've spotted that we all know? They do love him. He does the little things brilliantly, glides around the pitch effortlessly, seems to have time with his clever use of space and peripheral vision. He epitomises Potter's brand of total football, great first touch and an eye for the pass. They feel they haven't got the best out of him yet because the team is still taking shape. And as I say, buzzing around the spaces created by the striker. However, and these are the other things that we will also remember, he puts years on me with some of the stuff he does in his own half of the field.
Yep.
But it's great fun to watch. He's a real threat in the attacking third. And his positioning is an area of his game that needs work, but Potter can help him do that. And this is if you feel free to tweet on this, folks. McCarthy stifled Selena at Ipswich, but he's the type of player who can thrive under Potter. Potter has just told him to express himself and actually enjoy playing.
Wow. Well, I suspect that quite a lot of Ipswich fans might endorse that perspective, but maybe we'll leave that one to be debated rather than take sides on it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because in Mick's model, they did talk about the fact that he was criticised by Mick for that lack of positional discipline, for kind of just
playing in the wrong areas as well.
Exactly. Mick had a model, whereas I think the free role, I think, would be the way you describe what Potter would ideally like to give Selena, because he can be unpredictable. Like a lot of other players, he's had a couple of knocks, so he hasn't been playing. He's now at full speed, and they expect him to start against us. But he would be the central playmaker. The other player who's worth mentioning in association with him, as I say, rather than just running our way through all the players, Leroy Fair is another player who is coming back from a groin injury. Now, he's a very important player because one of the things about Swansea they feel is that they actually lack physicality, and they've been having to move players around into positions to kind of compensate for that. They feel like, again, going back to what Potter's approach, I want you to use your physicality to mitigate what the opponents are doing in this situation. It will happen to be in this part of the field. So, for example, Kyle Norton, the fullback, has played in a holding midfielder role to help with that. But the key midfielder that they want to see come back, and he is gaining fitness again, but they're nurturing him. It'll be interesting to see if he starts as Leroy Fair, because his physicality and his power gives the team width and it gives the team tempo. Even though he himself may not be as technically magnificent as Selena, him being there it changes the dimension and the disposition of the team, if that makes sense.
Probably pushes Selena further up the pitch, presumably.
It does do. But he gives them a combative edge, so he can nullify if they've any destructive opponents in the midfield. Not that we may have any, but that Fair would be the player to give them that impetus and to release a lot of the width and a lot of the creativity in the rest of the team. He's an understated player, and I think the criticism of him again was that he was possibly a bit lazy, possibly played within himself under previous managers. But again, Potter has he's kind of worked his magic on him, and he suddenly realizes, actually, I've got a role to play here, and that's his role within the team. He's a catalyst. That's the other word they use. We look more sharper and confident with his power in the middle. One of them said that if we had Fair and Selena in midfield, if Swansea had both of them, they would hit the playoffs no problem at all, because that would give them those two alone. You could put a third midfielder in, but those two alone would give it enough balance.
Ominous, isn't it?
It is.
And I seem to recall Fair doing quite well for Norwich in the Premier League, and perhaps he's one of these players that has been kind of a bit hit and miss of late. But in a division lower, where the standard of opposition is a lot less, and probably he's quite combative as well. Maybe he kind of does as a really important role, might be a really pivotal player for them. So presumably you would have, if it's a midfield three, you'd have Fair in the middle and Cena on the left, would you?
Yeah, you would. That's how you'd set them up. It could be that Fer. You wouldn't describe him. He's not like he's not like a Patrick Vieira type of box to box combative midfielder. That he doesn't tend to be combative, but he has got physicality and
Yes.
he has got a presence, and therefore, so he would move between the boxes, but not in that kind of not in that rumbustious way, as it
Yeah.
were, if that makes
I
sense.
think he can hit a shot as well, from what I
He
recall.
can.
So
He
maybe
can
that's
do.
an
Yeah.
additional threat, perhaps
Yeah,
there too.
yeah, that's interesting. The other players, just on midfield while we're there, we'll have a look at it. Um, there's a couple. George Barnes. The rest of the players are youth products. This is the thing; they don't have a lot of depth. They've a couple of youth products they've brought in who they're blooding. George Barnes and Jan Danda, both a little bit lightweight and a little bit raw. Selena really is the playmaker if they can play him. The other established midfielder is Tom Carroll,
Mm,
ex Tottenham. He's not, they say,
very
not the
highly
most.
rated,
Yeah, blossoming
or
again under
was.
Potter. Yes, yes, this is the thing. Under Potter again, moving into pockets of space, looking for the ball, the opposite of his previous habit of standing still and shying away from it. Really busy around the middle, and they said that he came off against Wigan. He was the fulcrum of the team against Wigan when he was playing in the middle during the week. Because Wigan are, they came at them in the last half hour of that draw. Swansea were thinking, oh, we're really comfortable here. It's all going really nicely for the first hour, and then all hell broke loose in the last half hour. And part of that was due to the fact that Carroll wasn't on the field. He has blossomed. He's really blossomed under Potter, and he's one of those players that he gives them stability. He can, as I say, he's a sort of holding central midfielder in a way. But he can get forward and link play. He's not, he's a kind of good utility midfielder. The old unseen work thing, a lot of industry, but he does give that midfield balance. So again, you say Carroll, Fer, and Celine in the middle is a decent trio. It really
Sounds
is.
really complementary,
Yeah,
unlike
yeah,
the
yeah,
midfielder three that we were talking about at Borough, which
yeah.
is definitely not
Yes.
that.
Yeah, it was anything but. So yeah, that's interesting. The other former town player. We'll have a little look at the central defence as well. While we've talked about Selena, they've got a rock solid pairing of Mike van der Hoorn and Joe Roden in at the back. And again, a classic thing where you've got the experienced player and you've got the apprentice coming through. And Van der Hoorn, he's not that experienced really. He's 25, played for Ajax, and then he went to young Ajax. Commanding, solid as a rock. And again, another strange one, another Dutch player who's a bit of a liability with this distribution. We had Kieften Belt last week.
We've got
Now we
Dutch
have
Mike for the second week in a
Dutch
row.
Mike second week in a row. Maybe we're onto something here because this is why they're struggling. The whole lot of them have forgotten how to pass. Over ambitious passes. But he's a no nonsense player. He's physical. He gives them physicality. They don't have many physical players, so when they have it, they prize it. Um, but along with him, they've got Joe Roden. Now, this guy's is worth keeping an eye on. We won't have seen him before. He's 20, youth product, Wales under 21 international, 6'3" Welsh colossus.
Wow.
Calm and doesn't make rash challenges. He plays the percentages really, really well. They really think he's a serious long-term prospect. And we'll have a look at him properly on Saturday.
Mm.
The slight weakness is just he will have an error in him because he's inexperienced. So there will be a little rick somewhere in the game. But they also said even though he has a very good leap on him, he hasn't actually mastered how to use it yet. He either misjudges the flight of the ball or he can get out muscled. But that's obviously something they'll be working on that during that's an objective, I would say. But him and Van der Hoorn is a good central partnership. Therefore, meaning that Cameron Carter-Vickers, who we know and love, is actually a bench option for them.
Which is, when you think
Yeah.
about it, how well he did for us last season. I think he'd be
Mm.
walking into our first team, wouldn't he?
Oh yes, no question at all.
What a
Really-
waste.
It's amazing. So he started against Stoke. I think he's only had one substitute and one starting appearance recently. And if they ever want to go to a back three, Vickers is, Carter Vickers. You can just literally just drop him in between the other two, and it's and off you go. It'll work comfortably. He's what they like what they've seen, but they haven't seen enough yet. But so a unit was obviously the first word. You forget that he's only 20. I mean, it's when you look at him, it's remarkable. A robust player who looks decent with better distribution than most centre backs. They've picked him up. They've read him already. And the other thing, which it's funny listening to other fans talking about our players. The other thing, which you may not realise, they said strong and decisive. And
Yeah.
you forget the decisive bit with him. He really was. He was
Yeah.
confident in his judgment. He knew what he wanted to do before the ball came to him, which is really, really good. Mm.
We've kind of talked quite often about the threat that ITFC pose which will largely be through Jackson's pace, and Sears is now being introduced as well. So there's pace there. Is there any note on? I don't know whether you picked up
No.
whether these are Van der Horn or Rodon are quick or can cope with that kind of thing.
Neither quick nor slow. I think they are
Trying
I
to
think
find some glimpses of positivity there, Harry.
just to see if we can spot anything. There was, it wasn't like when we talked about Bolton, where they poor old David Wheater. You were thinking, even though he didn't play, there was a definite lack of pace. Nothing about that. There's been no discussion at all. And again, looking at the fact that they've conceded so few goals, I think it would be, you're dealing with a more Middlesbrough type of defensive circumstance than anything flakier. Let's just say. Sorry.
I mean, I was gonna see if there was any opportunities down the wide, and it's interesting you mentioned that they have the options to go for a three at the back, because the wing back options or the full back options are names that people would know. Martin Olsen, another ex-Norwich player, Carl Norton, these are experienced Premiership campaigners. I don't know if there are any others in there as well, but the full back options are no slouches either, are they?
No, they're not. Norton is the best. He's probably the pick of all of the back four, actually, or of the defensive group, more accurately. He's done really, really well. He has switched in again when they were light of a physical presence in central midfield. It's the classic thing of a fullback being able to play as a holding midfielder, and he's done that. Here you go. He's a no-nonsense defensive leader who's definitely found his mojo under Potter. It comes up again and again. He can play the odd sloppy ball, but he breaks up a lot of play. And he actually put in a really good cross against Queen's Park Rangers. One of the things that they're trying to do is get the fullbacks up the field. It's more in an attacking sense, and they haven't been doing enough of it. But against the Queen's Park Rangers, the 3-0 win they had last week, for them was a glimpse of the future, I think. That's how they saw it. Over on the left side, Martin Olsen, who we know from Norwich, left back, he's had the fans picked up on a couple of things. He's had a bit of a stop-start to the season. He played for Sweden in the World Cup, and therefore he had a curtailed pre-season, but also he's had a hamstring injury, which means he's been in and out of the team. The question, this has come up before with him. I remember, I think it was when he was with Blackburn, or it might have been even with Norwich fans talked about it, that he is very good. He is a threat with his crosses, but he is more of a defensive liability, and he can back off instead of engaging too often. So if there is a chink, that might be where it is with Edwards. If you're going to find a way in, that could be the way. Though he probably would need Donacien working with him. But Olsen's been in and out of the team, and what Potter has done to compensate is play Matt Grimes instead, who is a converted midfielder. Now Grimes is a former Exeter player, only 23, but he's got a bit of bite and gets stuck in. He's really a holding midfielder playing, whereas Norton's been a holding midfielder playing, or a fullback playing as a holding midfielder. Grimes is a holding midfielder playing as a left back, and again, typically with that, good defensively, good bite, good at getting stuck in, but not necessarily giving them a platform to build out from.
I'm trying to think we're used to the kind of square pegs in round holes kind of analogy with Paul Jewell.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to. You keep mentioning how the players are kind of interchangeable into certain different positions. Yeah. It kind of feels like the pegs, the shapes don't matter. Do you know what I mean? It's where you're useful. It's what skills you've got. Yeah. And that depends where I'm going to put you on the field. It's I mean, it's pretty impressive stuff actually. If it works, clearly, Yeah,
it's all over the field. It really is. There's no, as I say, what's my skill set and where can I apply it? But then that obviously has to follow through on the training ground. You can't just, they obviously work hard on what they're doing.
It's not an on the day type.
Yeah, it's not. You can't just improvise it, I think. But as I say, so Grimes possibly or Olsen at left back would be how it would work. And further up the field then out wide, as I say, Selena is a possibility to play out there, but Connor Roberts is worth mentioning. He's a right winger, again 23, another youth product. He had one full season on loan at Yeovil in 2015-16, so he has got games under him. He's a Wales international right back. He played against the Republic of Ireland at right back in the recent what are they called? The Nations League. Thank you. That's what it was called. Him in front of Norton on the right has worked well. Again, when you've got a right back playing in an advanced role, remember Cresswell used to do it occasionally in front of Mings. It actually doesn't work badly because they can actually flip over, and so if Norton bombs on, Roberts can then suddenly become a he can almost be like a right wing back, and he can
Yes,
go back and
can drop
cover.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't have the creative spark as an out and out right winger. But the other thing they've said about him, they've talked about his focus. He's very focused. He doesn't. He's both in terms of his career, but also in terms of his time on the field. He's not a player who'll switch off. He's got tremendous determination. But as I say, good time tackles. He's very strong in tackling intent as well. But and he'll always try. Good. Covers every blade of grass, I should say, and also tries to give players with the ball an option. So he's very alert. He's one of those alert, industrious, wide players. They've had the reason Selena's been playing on the left is because they are struggling for options. There's always one player who's getting a tough time, and it's Barry McKay. The
Ex-Forest, isn't he?
That's him,
Rangers
Scotland.
as well, I think.
Yeah, Scottish player. I'm not sure about this Barry McKay fellow. And then somebody replied, "I am. He's a lazy player. He hasn't settled in yet. It could be a confidence thing, but when you look at all the other players who've blossomed under Potter, it may come. Wingers, as we know, can be capricious, scared to play when he should be turning defences and causing them plenty of problems. In a way, this is a perfect system for him because that thing of turning defences is something I think that Potter likes the team to do, but McKay isn't the one doing it. And the only other possibility, there's another youth player, Daniel James, he's very much a fringe player. But Nathan Dyer, the right winger,
He's still there, is he?
He's still there, and bless him, he's the one. He won a Premier League medal on loan at Leicester when he was on.
Of course, yes. Lucky guy, yeah.
Yeah. We always have a "Where are they now?" And I think Nathan Dyer is this week's "Where are they now?"
Man.
There you go. The phrase "emergency backstop." He's come in for a couple of games. He's, if he comes on from the bench, I wouldn't be quaking. But he's got no end product. But at least, this is lovely backhanded insult, really. He has no end product, but at least he gets into positions where we notice that flaw. So.
That would be we need to have maybe a down with faint praise of the week or whatever it is, isn't it?
That's a lovely one. He works hard and tracks back, but then he becomes a spectator and ball watches. So he's very much,
he's getting on a bit now, isn't he?
He's getting on a bit now, exactly, yeah. And moving on to the other strikers, I mean, then as I say, we'll look at Baker Richardson and McBurney in a second, but it's worth mentioning this is the other mad Potter world thing. Wayne Routledge playing as a striker, which for a 33-year-old winger is another player who's had a new lease of life. They played him again purely through a lack of options. He has played as a front man for them recently, pinching the ball and retaining possession so well, linking with the midfielders. His weight of pass is a bit off, and he's never been a finisher, but he showed some lovely touches, and the ball just stuck to him as a centre forward. So again, he was given a brief look. And again, when you're 33 and you're not necessarily going to be mobile up and down defensively, you can actually do this role as a centre forward because you don't actually have to be hammering. It's a bit like Aaron Wilbraham used to do for Bristol City. You don't have to get around the pitch so much as a striker. It's more about having an understanding of what position you need to be in and who you need to feed. I mean, well, Chris Martin we could mention as well. He's been doing that for years.
Did he score against QPR, Routledge, or was it an assist? I thought he scored, but maybe I made that up.
Now
sorry, I've dropped you in it there, haven't I?
No, you dropped me a minute. Let me have a quick look and see. It was Fulton got one of the goals. No, I do not know.
Okay. I'll pretend that he did and pretend that I actually know something, Harry.
Okay.
But that's probably wrong. Probably wrong.
Oh dear, forgive me. No, that I didn't make a note of that actually. No, forgive me. No, but I don't think he's not been played for his finishing anyway. That's not what he was there for. But it was just but it highlights the adaptability. One player who did score against Queens Park Rangers, linking beautifully, was Courtney Baker Richardson. Now, do you want to lead on this because he's a man from your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I know that his stats are quite good, and I think he scored. I think he had a 1 in 3 record for Leamington. I mean, it's the Northern Conference. I think they're either 1 or 2 rungs off the actual conference. Came through the Coventry youth system, I believe. But highly thought of in Leamington. I think they were pretty gutted to let him to lose him. But it's quite a session through the ranks to go from non-league to, at the time it was a Premier League signing, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know too much about his style of play, I'll be honest, Harry, but I know that he's got good pedigree at least for the non-leagues.
Yeah. But he started against Millwall.
Did he get sent off?
after 5 minutes.
Yes, I remember that. Yes, I don't know where that's. I didn't know that was in his
Oh
locker.
dear. Yeah, but redemption was the word when he scored against Queens Park Rangers. To be fair, the comment on that was,
I mean,
I
we
think
could
he's.
talk about sendings off, Harry. Let's
No,
not,
that's true. No, I'm not judging. I'm not judging
glass
the guy.
houses and all that.
It was his first league. It was his league debut for them, I think, or certainly. And they were. They said one of them said that's what you get with inexperience, and we
Yeah,
can think of.
enthusiasm,
Yeah,
perhaps
exactly.
misdirected.
No intent, but it was a poor tackle. And again, what we talked about this team, they don't actually have a huge amount of physicality with a lot of their players. Baker Richardson does give them this up front, and one of them said he's a big unit that's not afraid to get stuck in, and he has the right attitude to deal with thugs at this level.
Well, he's used to
So
them on a weekly basis in
yeah,
the
yeah,
Northern
exactly.
Conference.
So you could see he just needs to control his approach. I think he was a bit unguarded. I think exactly. Having come through as as a non-league scrapper, he will have his game needs work. They feel that his touch isn't great yet. He's got he's raw, but what got real potential, and where he does come in, and where he does sort of have a real role is that, and we may see this again on Saturday, is that his industry can free up McBurney's creativity. And a lot of them said that with Baker Richardson leading the line and McBurney playing in a slightly deeper role, and they had Selena out on the left, that actually worked. That gave them a proper attacking balance because McBurney was able to actually attack. So if I can link into McBurney then, because not only McBurney is a finisher, the one finisher they've got, but not only is he a finisher, his link-up play, his hold-up play is really good. He does like to drop deeper where he can play as a support striker. So Baker Richardson is the perfect foil for him in that regard. And as I say, they didn't use this combination at Wigan because they just thought it wasn't going to be effective enough. But against Queens Park Rangers it was, and I would be stunned if Potter doesn't run with these two again against us, with Selena possibly playing out wide.
It sounds
Don't
like
rule it out.
one of the no. Again, you've said this quite a few times. It feels like there's just partnerships all
Mm,
throughout the Swansea team. Fur brings
yeah,
out the best in Selena,
yeah,
perhaps, and Baker Richardson allows McBurney to kind of free up, and the two centre
yeah,
backs are kind of a good foil for one another. It feels like
yeah.
there's a cohesion through that team,
There is. Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
that's probably a quite stark contrast to our own team, really.
Yeah, yeah, it's a covalent bond thing, isn't it?
Yes,
It's nascent. I mean, let's be honest, they're not. They're still finding. It's very much early days with this, and
evolving. Yeah,
we talked about this before we were broadcasting. That we're looking at Swansea now. They look as if they could click and do that barnstorming run. I mentioned Reading, you mentioned George Burley. This could be a team that suddenly clicks, and particularly when they've got Wilfried Boney and Jefferson Montero, who are both injury prone, but are hoping if they get them back and fully fit, and they're still at the club, and Potter can get them thinking in the right way. You've got a chassis here, and you just put that engine in, and they could absolutely
up they go.
rip through the league. McBurney, what else is there to say to him? He's not just he is a finisher, but it's not all about goals. He has a poacher's knack of scoring. He can go quiet for 10 minutes and then suddenly do an old Gareth Muller and pop up and bag one. But he does drop deep. He plays as a support striker. He tracks back. But his instinct and this is something they talk about with him. He has an instinct where he will spin an attack, so he will drop off and then flip around and come back again. He's a clever player. The word marauding came up a few times as well. So he's the obvious name, but I think him balanced with Selena, with Baker Richardson, and as I say, you've probably got Roberts on the other side as well. So you've got as I say, it's a well balanced attack for what it is.
I was going to ask a question here from our friend Mullet, actually,
Mm.
in terms of the type of play that we might see. So he asks, are ITFC fans going to get a glimpse of what we should have done this summer? Is Paul Hurst going to be stood next to a managerial speedboat or two-berth caravan looking like a dugout equivalent of a Betamax?
That's a brilliant question.
Wow.
I smiled. No, that's a brilliant question, and I smiled. I smiled when I saw it on Twitter. Um, yeah, I agree. And you kind of think, well, what have we not done that they have done, given the disparity between the teams? I think the obvious mirroring is that they have a better balance between not the novice and the experience.
Yes.
So, if you look in all those departments of the field, you've got Fer, you've got Norton, you've got Van der Hoorn. They have players throughout the team who can offer a little bit of know-how, even playing Wayne Routledge as a striker, or
Mm.
they can keep that balance between experience, because there's a lot of young players in this side coming through, but you just feel that it's a school where they're all being developed, and that's something which put the mirror against us, and it seems not to be going that way at all, and you do have a sense, I mean, being fatalistic about it, there's a sense with Swansea that there is a definite air of progress about where they're going, in terms of there's a philosophy of play, etc. And I mean, we could end up looking at, there's a risk that we could end up looking at this as a brief but insane interlude in our history, the way things are going with us. So it's a brilliant and it's a very accurate question
I
to
mean,
ask.
in terms of the
Yeah.
question as well, it got me to thinking how interesting a matchup it would have been with the previous manager in the dugout instead,
Yeah.
and how he might have dealt with kind of Potter's philosophy as well. But obviously, we'll never know unless he ends up at
Yeah.
Villa Park or something like that. But
Yeah.
any more on Swansea before we start to
No, I
spin
think
around and
no,
look
I
at
think
us? Any
no,
views
no.
on us or the
Oh
game?
yeah, oh yeah, plenty on us. I'll run through.
It's
Yes.
almost like we planned for this in advance, Harry.
God, this is yeah. I did, they have had a few early views. There is this is they are utterly confident of winning. There's an assumption that the draw at Wigan was good because it meant 4 points from these two games. And that's coming up wide. That came up through the Wigan match day threads quite a bit. The headline I've put up on the TWTD piece, which will go up which goes up on a Friday. We should be looking to turn Ipswich over big time on Saturday. There was this yeah, and we were joking before, and we've talked about Frank Lampard's derby, and you've talked about how my friend Paul is a Stoke fan, talks about big spending Stoke is what they were known as. The phrase "struggling Ipswich" kept coming up as well. Struggling Ipswich,
Brilliant.
that's what we are. Oh God, life, that's such is life. But there were these two quotes came up. This sums up the more buoyant mood and the more optimistic. They really think it's one of their easiest games of the season, and that's what he starts with. Ipswich are heading towards relegation. They've nothing to recommend them. Hurst was on the brink of the sack. Selena and Carter Vickers might have some sort of point to prove. We're playing at home, and there's a considerable amount of confidence. We have to win this comfortably. Then, bouncing back against that, talk about tempting fate. This is exactly the sort of banana skin game that clubs slip up on. We need to play our best football and find the goal, as they're probably desperate to win. And this is interesting. They talk about us kicking them off the pitch. We don't do that
No,
really.
that's not
But I,
anymore. Yeah.
but I think that's their perception of refereeing the Championship. They've had a few when they played Forest. They were scathing about Forest recently. Forest did set out, apart from their creative players, the back six, the 4-2 that Karanka has. They hammered into them, and
Maybe
it was
that's our best bet then.
who knows? Reduce it to that. Yeah, it's yeah. No, they talk about the more attacking lineup. They think that, as I say, the Baker Richardson and McBurney attack is what they'll go for. We must surely go for the jugular at home to one of the poorest sides in the division. Yeah,
Happy
yeah.
days. Well, yeah.
Happy days. Eh?
That's,
Yeah.
that's music to the ears of everyone who's listening on the coach going across to Swansea and
Mm.
the early hours of Saturday morning.
Yeah.
We'll leave it for Swansea there. Harry, thank you again,
Okay.
as always, for another fantastic piece of work there.
Cheers.
Let's
Cheers,
try
Rick.
and go through the questions then.
Yeah.
As always, I think Harry and I are kind of in agreement again that we'll try not to comment too much on speculation. I know it's inevitable at the moment, and we have got questions about this. I mean, let me quickly pick up on that. I think it's from, where is it? I've just lost it. From George Lancaster. Is the vague, in the know type gossip on social media from fans becoming really, really, really boring? I think it's inevitable, sadly, isn't it, when things are not going well, Harry?
Yeah, struggling clubs will be very porous in terms of gossip and rumours, no question about that. What I say to everyone is just, we've all been hearing things, and not just from one source. You hear it from sources that are apparently unconnected. I park all of that and just put it to one side. You just look at what's going on the pitch. That's the evidence that we have to evaluate everything on, because ultimately that's how our season will stand or fall, and it's also how our manager will stand or fall, by watching what's going on, which is probably what I was so alarmed by what I saw in the first half at Middlesbrough. But yeah. Mm.
So let's just pick up on the midfield quickly then, because we've had a question from Harry again. Harry's asked you to pick out a book that sums out Ipswich at the moment, but I don't know. You generally strike me as quite a happy, cheery fellow, Harry. So maybe maybe there is anything depressing there. I don't know.
I don't know. I'll have a think about
Have
that.
a think about percolate that one, and we'll see
I'll
what we
let
can
that
come up with.
percolate.
But
I might tweet an answer on it. I can't think off the top of my head. Where would you, it's the Irish thing of you wouldn't set out from here. It really is. I can't think. I'm trying to think of. Let that one run. Let that one go through the filter bed. Something will leap out in a second. It's what I
um,
do for a living.
but I guess he asked quite a simple question, and I think we've talked about it before. Is John Nolan good enough for the first team? I guess I might tweet the question out if that's all right. Is he good enough to stay in the first team?
No. No, I wouldn't
Yeah.
play him at all. I think you're better off playing Sears. What we talked about McBurney and Baker Richardson, I would do the same with Sears and Jackson, actually.
I like
Yeah,
that.
that's what I would do. That's what I would do. Just because, again, it was another quixotic substitution because basically Sears did exactly what Jackson did in the first half against Middlesbrough, and it had exactly the same result. It altered nothing. It was good. There were some moments of incisiveness, but whereas if you had one working off the other, it might have, because we were two down, it wouldn't have unbalanced the midfield because the midfield couldn't have been any less balanced in
Yeah.
that sense. So that would have been a. I think if you had the two working as foils off each other, it might have actually just given the Middlesbrough centre halves a little bit more to think about. Yeah,
There's two Tuesday night games where a forward has ploughed a rather lonely furrow, actually done quite a lot of work, as much as they could, and then being hauled off at half time. It was
yeah,
Harrison against Brentford, I think, and Jackson on Tuesday against Borough, and I thought that was pretty harsh on Jackson. And
yeah,
as you say, I mean, what harm was there at 2-0 down to have two forwards on the pitch? But
yeah.
in Hurst we
Yeah.
trust.
But this is the thing again. It goes back to what we're saying about Potter. It doesn't have to be. You might think, oh well, that means you're going to 4-4-2. You're not going to 4-4-2. But if you have the player playing, if you because Freddie, when he started switching out to the left, when Mick moved into to a wider role, because I remember he's played on both left and right. Certainly, I remember him playing against Wolves in the playoff season late on in the 1-1 draw. He was on the left backing up Mings. But he can track back. He can do that work. He has that in his kit bag now. So there's nothing to stop him dropping off and helping out and picking up one of the Borough midfielders if necessary, and then breaking forward when the opportunity comes. Because we know the other thing about Freddie is that he can actually run in behind defenders.
Yeah.
A bit like McBurney, actually, in that sense.
He can play any of those kind of front four positions, including the number 10, couldn't he?
Yeah.
Hey ho.
And then by pushing the team up by pushing the Borough defenders back in, asking them more questions, that brings your wingers into play and it gives Edwards more to play off. Anyway, yeah.
Absolutely right. J Dav 1984 asks: there have been opinions that there is a lack of leadership on the pitch. Is it time to drop the old guards, Luke Chambers, Jonas Knudsen, Cole Scouse, for a last roll of the Hurst dice? Or is that Peterborough? You've already mentioned Peterborough away all over again. I guess it's slightly contradictory, isn't it? If you lack of leadership and then you get rid of those experienced players. But yeah, any thoughts on that question?
It's not a lack of leadership, it's a lack of confidence in my view. I don't think there's a lack of leadership. I think the players are doing what they can out there from what I've seen. I think the way we don't know how they're being trained or how they're being coached, or we don't know what's happening behind the scenes on purely from a footballing point of view. But for me, the players like Chambers, players like Hughes, they're trying to lead. I think they are trying to grab the pike staff and take things forward, which explains why we do well in 45 minutes of games. But it just may not be enough because of the lack of quality to be able to hold it for the whole game. If you take those experience, if you take Knudsen, Chambers, Scouse out of the team, I would be very frightened. I would be really very frightened.
I think so too. Yeah. I think you can excuse Chambers
I think Chambers for me is
Horatio. Guy.
He's Horatio on the bridge. He really is. He's Horatio on the bridge. He's holding, he's trying to hold the whole thing together, and it's not easy.
James Mealing and Richard Wiseman ask similar questions around this possibly being Paul Hurst's final match. I think we'll avoid speculating on that. It's looking difficult for him, isn't it, though?
Yeah.
And Seb asks something similar, but also says, I guess flipping it around and saying, would a spirited draw like what we saw against Villa be enough to keep him in the job? I guess if the rumblings that we're hearing do play out, what saves him is a win enough, I guess, or is a good performance enough maybe at this stage?
Well, it's not just the result. It's you could argue if you mug an ugly 1-0 win and having with Swansea having hit the bar 8 times or whatever. I think it's more to do with the how the team play. Have we got a functioning and coordinated midfield? Because we certainly didn't on Tuesday night. Can the players hold it together for a full 90 minutes, or will we get overrun again?
Mm.
And will players not disappear in the course of the game? Will all of the relationships, will there be a pattern to our play? Will there be will there be a tempo to our play? Will there be a rhythm? Can we progress the ball forward and not just do it periodically, but actually to hold it together? I think it's as much that in many ways will inform the answer to that question as
Yeah.
much as the result.
Yeah, and
Mm,
I'll splice in part of Justin's question here as well. Um,
yeah.
in your opinion, are these just transition issues, or should we be concerned with the current squad / performance as our manager? Have you seen enough progress? I guess we're saying we've seen it in pockets, but pockets isn't enough at this point, is it?
Not at this stage. Not at this stage. No.
It's
Mm,
tough, isn't it?
yeah.
I'm just gonna. Ben did me a favour and retweeted my questions tweet, but it does mean we have a parallel thread of questions. So just
Okay.
bear with me as I flick over to the other side. Simo again. I hope it's okay if we've kind of asked about this possibly being last game and all that kind of stuff. And Adam Flat asks similar as well. Um, Adam then says, or does he entrust him with the 6 pointers coming up against? I think he misses out QPR, but Preston, Millwall, and Reading. What's your thought on timing? I guess is the international break so important, or with winnable games coming up after Swansea, do you give him the international break to regroup, possibly build some of that stuff that you were talking about, and then give him those games to prove himself?
The games coming up in a way are immaterial. Evans has a decision to make either way. He does have a decision to make whether even if Hurst stays, then that's a decision as much as if Hurst goes. And who we're playing in a way is incidental to whether it's more fundamentally about whether the model of play can work. The international break is good in the sense that it gives the coach 2 weeks to work with the players, a new coach, but it also gives them 2 months to actually assess what the issues are and to see what it is they need to get right for January, even though
Mm.
January will only be an emergency sticking plaster and just trying to put things together again.
Yeah.
So in a way, who we're playing next, the 2 weeks is important because it does give you a breather where you can actually put some basic infrastructure in place, tactically. But in a way, to me, the who we're playing is neither here nor there, because the games are coming so quick and so fast that you can't stop and catch your breath really.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's my take. I don't know whether you'd agree.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah. I really don't know what I think at the moment.
mm,
I've kind of been trying
yeah,
to figure out on Twitter this week, with the help of a few people, whether the role that Evans has to play, and it does feel that Evans got away with not having to be too involved because under the previous manager, because McCarthy felt like he was in total control of everything on the field. Hurst, to me, has come out and said some things that suggest that he's probably underestimated the leap that the championship is, and has done
totally.
some things that probably, if he had a mentor or perhaps a more um, football savvy employer, might
Yeah.
have not happened. And I wonder to what extent, if Hurst ends up leaving early and we end up becoming one of these clubs that dispenses of its managers prematurely or very quickly, it's another blot on Evans' copybook of appointing managers. There was I got embroiled in debates over whether McCarthy succeeded or failed at it during his time, but certainly he didn't achieve what hopefully Evans was expecting him to have done. But Keane, Jewell, McCarthy to an extent, and Paul Hurst, all managers with sufficient records to justify being in a position to get the job, all of whom have left the club probably in a worse state than when they found it, or have not been able to move it forward. And to me, there's a
Mm,
one common denominator there.
yeah.
Um, there's a mini rant for you, but
No,
I don't
it's
know
fair.
where we go. Um,
It's fair comment. Is that thing of it goes back to Dave Whelan at Wigan, who was a football man.
yeah,
And so forgive me monologuing about it, but the owners getting clubs relegated thing, it does. If you good judgment is fundamental, and I think I'd hoped that Mick had taught Evans a lot, and because he's now owned a football club for 10 years, so hopefully he'll have hoovered up enough en passant, as it were, just so that okay, I've now got more of a judgment. I've got enough experience. I've dealt with agents. I've seen enough to help me plot a way forward. But then again, I don't know. Was he desperate? Was he? You could argue, was he desperately unlucky with Hurst? But just as equally, when you put it in the context that you have, Rich, you could say, well, maybe it's just the latest in a sequence. But I don't know. The other question is, and he hinted at this at the end of the interview he did at the end of last season. Maybe he's looking over his shoulder that if somebody came in with the right offer, he might want to gently exit the stage. But that
maybe so.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
what's he getting out of it, frankly? So,
yeah.
a couple more questions.
So it's a fair point, though.
Yeah. We could have talked. Let's go back quickly on the midfield. Yucky Rain, my favourite Twitter profile for questions, talks about Nolan dropping. I don't know whether we talked about this before we started recording or during, but Nolan being that number 10
We did.
raised weird. Some Shrewsbury fans were a bit bemused by that and thought that he maybe should drop, and that's what's alluded to by Yucky Brain. We need to find out your proper name, mate, but we'll go with Yucky Brain for now. Would you put Nolan in Scoose's position and play Dazelle in Nolan's spot in an attempt to pass the ball forward? He also adds that he thinks the Chambers should be dropped, but we've talked about that bit. But yeah, Nolan deeper, Dazelle or Sears maybe in the number 10 position. Do you see that? Or
I can
Nolan
see.
on the bench?
I would, given Nolan's lack of confidence, really, he just seems to be, as I say, he strikes me as a player who's hiding at the moment. You could, whether you'd play. I think Skuse has lost his role in the team before, because before he was a pure holding midfielder, and he was very good at spotting danger and squaring it off quickly. He could spot danger seconds before anybody else could. Whether I'd drop Skuse, I think Skuse, going back to the Potter thing, if he's got a clear role, I would keep him in the team, and it would be for that. But if you did that, that might give Nolan. I could see that possibly working, where possibly breaking forward. The question, I don't know what Nolan is, because it was a go-go he played with as well in Shrewsbury, and whether he needs that more physical midfield partner.
Right.
I'm not sure Chalobah's that, but
he feels isolated anyway, Nolan, in that 10 position. I know he's tried to pick up good positions, but he just doesn't feel like he's close enough to the action.
No.
I thought Chalobah, this is the trouble with Chalobah, he's always got a rick in him for a goal, but actually in the last two games, I think Birmingham was one of his best performances that I've seen, with him using the ball and trying to create, and certainly against Borough, he got crosses into the box. He kind of marauded around a bit. Maybe it was his positioning that maybe let us down, but I think Chalobah's starting to play himself into a bit of form. I think does Hurst kind of, you've got to play players on their form and their merit and how they fit in the system, and I just don't think it's clicked for Nolan. So why wouldn't you take him out of the firing line and build his confidence back up again?
Yeah. It's mind you, given where Hurst now is, he might think, well, let's just roll the dice and see what happens anyway. Yeah.
Nick Clifton. We'll end with this one, Harry. And there's a nice addition from Daryl, from our friend in Florida. Town lose to Swansea. Marcus Evans decides to make a change, and he appoints Harry from Bath. What are the top 3 things that Harry would do to sort this? And I'll just tell you what Daryl thinks you should do. He thinks you will sit at the touchline and read stories to the opposing team. They will be mesmerised by his voice, and Town will bang in the goals. What's your top 3 things, Harry, if you were in the dugout for Town?
God, well, before looking at... I would scour the world for an experienced midfielder. I really would. Somebody who would actually...
It's been a long time coming, isn't it? Bloody
hell. Just a proper... Somebody who would actually give a Leroy Fair type, I guess, if you're looking at Swansea, somebody to actually put some balance in the centre of the field. You do what any manager would do, is you just go back and let's tighten up, let's start there, and let's build. That's what every manager does when they come in. But and the other thing I would definitely do is set about rebuilding the confidence of that team, because that's the thing to me. There were several incidents, not just with the goals, but there was indecisiveness. It wasn't so much two players going for a ball. There was nobody going for a ball. There was one incident shortly after we were 2-0 down where the ball broke. It was on the corner of our penalty area, on the right corner, and there were three Town defenders around it, and a Middlesbrough player barged in and cracked a shot off. He had no right to get that ball, and that just again came back to the confidence issue. So that would be the first thing: just work on their self-belief and work on their confidence, because I think the players are doing everything they can. But it's as I say, that's where I'd set out from. The book question that came up earlier, there is
Yes.
one. This is a comfort read, and it's for all Town fans. I'm wearing my bookseller's hat here. It's a book by Mullet. I gave a copy of this to, and a few friends have known about it. A book called Saturday 3 p.m. by Daniel Gray. It's a lovely stocking filler for Christmas, actually. Really simple, short chapters about why we love football, visiting a ground for the first time, going with Dad, during passes that go out of play. And it's a lovely one. Carrying on regardless.
Yes. That's the football fans' philosophy, if ever there was one. Harry, that's brilliant. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you for that
There
one.
we go.
Thank you to everyone for your questions. Well, apologies if I missed anything out there, but we do love your questions, so thank you for those and keep those coming in. We're obviously having a bit of a break next week because of the internationals, but get us your questions in and we'll see how we go.
Yeah.
Harry, you've told us. Oh, go on. Have you got something more for us?
One quick sign off.
Yeah.
Traffic alert. I know this from living down this neck of the woods. Watch the variable speed cameras on the M4 at Cardiff. And there's a 50-mile-an-hour average speed camera system passing by on the M4 passing by Port Talbot. Sounds a bit like the halftime thing when they do the siren at Portman Road. I do apologise. And it's not really a catchy thing to end on. But watch those M4 cameras in South Wales. They can nab people. That was my small cautionary tale, if nothing else. At least don't get fined. Yeah.
We can add another string to our bow. We are previewing the football and we are providing traffic advice.
Traffic advice.
Give from the Blue Monday preview show.
Yes, indeed.
Harry, you've already done a mini plug for your preview blog, but do you want to do that again?
Yep, TWTD, lunchtime on Friday. The full written blog goes up with all the notes on the players, formations, videos of the 3 previous games, and plus a little bit more on what they're saying about us. Yeah,
and you're on Twitter.
On Twitter at Harry from Bath, where you can find a link to the Swansea piece and any of the other pieces that we've written over the course of the season. I pop them up on there.
Fantastic. Yeah. You can follow me at Ipswich, and you can follow the channel at Blue Monday ITFC, where you can find more information about our fantastic event on the 24th of November as well. And Harry, we will see each other in a couple of weeks.
Indeed.
I keep saying this, hopefully with some more positive news, but I mean, who knows what we'll find in 2 weeks' time, eh?
Yeah. Well, to echo the book, we will carry on regardless.
We'll carry on regardless. Thank you, Harry, again.
Okay. Cheers, Rich, and have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.